just wanted to kind of, obviously, we came to terms with Randall Cobb, got all that finished up last night. Also, Dennis Kelly, tackle, played in Tennessee the last few years. So we'll just kind of take your questions on that stuff.
You guys made the decision after the 18th season not to bring him back in free agency. Is he really just here to make Aaron happy? Is that primarily the...
I think that's a big part of it. I think it's a big, obviously without Aaron, I don't think we would probably be pursuing that. Randall's still a really good player. And seeing him last night just kind of reminded me, what an impact he'll have in our locker room and for our football team. But, this was a very important thing for Aaron, and that's why we did it.
Brian, is signing Dennis a reflection of maybe some hesitation about Dave being ready for week 1?
I don't think so. I think, obviously we lost Corey Lindsey and Rick Wagner, a couple guys that played a lot of snaps for us last year. And Dennis, quite frankly, started, I think, 17 games last year for Tennessee. Familiar with Matt's offense. Matt had him, you know what I mean? So I just think it really, at the tackle spot for us, gives us some depth that we got some young players that we're really excited about. I think, but overall now, it strengthens what I already thought was a pretty strong group.
Brian, how much harder did it just get for some of these young receivers to try to make this team with the
We are a very competitive group, but I think it's going to be hard to make our football team, not just at the receiver spot, but in a lot of places. So, but at the same time, I think it's going to be really competitive, and I feel really good about Matt and his staff and how to incorporate a lot of these guys who do make our football team.
Brian, regarding Aaron's perceived mistreatment of veterans, do you have any regrets for those relationships?
I wouldn't say I have any regrets. I think there's, obviously this is a hard business. This is a tough business, and when it comes to an end for any player, I don't think it usually goes well, and I don't think they usually feel very good about it. We are always very sensitive to what those players have given this organization, and when we go through that, it's always with class and dignity. But again, it's a hard business, and I think sometimes, obviously, the Packers may take the brunt of what is the NFL business. I think while those decisions are hard, they have to be made for the team to grow. I mean, keeping players longer than maybe we should, then all of a sudden we're not signing guys we should down the road. So it's a little bit of a domino effect, and it's hard. It's hard on players, and players should have those feelings. It's hard, and when you play as long as Aaron has, you're going to see a lot of that.
Goody, are there exceptions to the better to get rid of a guy a year too early than a year too late rule, though?
Not very often, but there probably is at times, but not very often.
When you're listening to that timeline yesterday, and you kind of hear Aaron's account of things month by month, I guess when you think back on some of your comments and staying steadfast with your message of we want Aaron back as our quarterback, how much do you think that resonated with him in the end?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I think we really have been pretty resolute the whole way through. Our kind of how we felt and what we wanted for this 2021 team never really changed. And we were open the entire time to work. A lot of these issues, obviously, we weren't aware of them until this year, right? Until this offseason. And once we were, we certainly wanted to work with them. And it's going to take both sides willing to do that, to kind of work through them. And I think we're committed to doing that.
Hey, Brian, obviously you were very upfront at the beginning about why Randall's here. As you move forward, with Aaron throughout the season, how do you figure out, which moves are feasible that he might suggest and which moves just simply aren't?
Yes, I think it's no different than it's always been. Like the input from him. Again, he's unique in the fact of what he's done for this organization. Every player's not going to have that kind of input, right? I mean, it's going to be Aaron. But he's always had it. I think it's how we incorporate it. And at the end of the day, it's really no different than some of the other people in our organization that have opinions about what we're going to do. At the end of the day, I'm going to take that in, and then I'll make the decision, and we'll move forward. And that's the way me and Matt have kind of done it and grown over the last couple of years. Is we got a lot of voices, and they're all important, and we listen to them all. And at the end of the day, me and him get together, and we'll make decisions what's best for the Green Bay Packers.
Is it hard to kind of wrestle with the, bringing in Cobb at this late stage and in the circumstances you did versus, maybe at the expense of guys you've been trying to develop like an EQ or Malik Taylor?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is. I think when we realized this was an important piece for Aaron early on in the thing, we kind of, we started seeing how could this work, and how could we make this work, not only from a football team perspective, salary cap, trade, all that compensation, all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, it's there are, positives and negatives to everything. Having Randall Cobb in our building is a positive. There's no doubt about that. What he brings to not only as a player but as a person to our locker room is a positive. Specifically to our quarterback, which is a very important piece of what we're trying to accomplish in 2021.
Hey, Brian, so would you consider Amari Rogers to play similar or the same kind of spot as Randall Cobb? And how do you think this affects?
Yeah, I think, talking to Matt and working with Matt through this, and I know you guys know this, but and as creative as him and his staff are, is finding ways for players to play their, put them in situations that they're going to be at their best. We talked a lot about that if Randall, we were able to acquire Randall and with Amari. He has a lot of different packages, 11 personnel packages that he really feels like might suit Amari, and then some that'll suit Randall, And obviously, Amari's a rookie, and so this might actually help ease some of, the demands put on him right away. And obviously as a returner in our return game, that's going to be a big part of his game too. So in my conversations with Matt, I felt, really confident that we'd be able to incorporate both players.
Ryan, was it difficult over the course of the offseason for you to relinquish some of this personnel decision-making control?
There's no relinquishing any personnel decisions or control. It's literally just finding a way to incorporate, maybe Aaron's thoughts and making him, and really explain to him why we're doing what we're doing. I think that's a big part of the things that he's got some grievance on. He just maybe just doesn't understand exactly why we did what we did, and we probably didn't communicate that well enough to him.
I guess the reason I asked that is because you said that Randall's here to make him happy. He's a player that he wouldn't be here if not
Sure.
for Aaron. So when I say relinquish control, I mean it like that. And does that make your job any harder to do?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things that make my job harder, right? And certainly, but at the same time, this is kind of a unique player and a unique circumstance in what we're trying to accomplish. So.
You talked about chemistry a lot. Rogers talked about that yesterday, about character guys and whatever else. When you have to kind of distance yourself in order to be able to make tough choices about guys and not get close to them, how do you gauge and how do you find out what the chemistry in the locker room is like?
Well, yeah, certainly I'm here every day, and certainly we got, coaches, scouts, people on the ground that are very in tune to what's going on. And I do think that a player like Aaron's perspective on that is obviously something important to us and certainly would factor in. But yeah, I think there's a lot of factors that go into making decisions, but the productivity on the field is always going to be the most important.
Brian, going back to allowing guys to walk throughout the years, you heard Aaron, a very long list of guys.
Yeah.
Going back to Charles Woodson, Micah Hyde, et cetera. There have been a number of guys, when they've left, have been pretty vocal about the fact that they weren't communicated with, their agents never got a call. I remember Micah mentioning that, Corey Lindsley recently mentioned that, the fact that not even a phone call to the rep to say, hey, there's just no way this can work.
I can't, on Micah, I can't comment on that because I don't know
But that's my question.
But on Corey, I can, and that's not true. So we always do that. And I will say this, like, I very much believe in the way when we release players that we do it with class and integrity. It's a hard thing for them when that happens. And I don't think when you feel you still can play and it's not right to walk away and feel like it was fair. You know what I mean? So it's hard. It's a hard business, but we always do that with integrity and class. So.
And
Is there a reason that going forward, Aaron should feel like he has maybe more of a seat at the table, maybe more of a say that he did in the past? I mean, what specific things are you changing as far as that process?
I think that's something that I think as we move forward here, as long as both parties are willing to to do that and to see how it goes, that he'll start to feel that. Again, like I said before, I think it's always been welcome. It's always been part of a process. But when decisions are made, I think we could have done a better job explaining to him why those decisions were made. So.
Goody, you were signing autographs the other day. Help us explain to those folks that say, we love the character of this team, but we just don't get the feelings for the now. You bring in Lowry, great Kenny Clark, Aaron Jones. Tampa brings in Sue, JJP, Leonard Fournette. Is there a difference there?
I'm not understanding your question.
The Tampa brought in guys that maybe have a year or two left, but they have all that experience for the postseason versus your younger team.
I don't really look at our team as a younger team. I mean, we got, Mercedes, Aaron, David Bakhtiari. We just signed Dennis Kelly, who's got a lot of, experience and you look at our team overall, I mean, we have some really young emerging talent, there's no doubt about it, but we signed Devondre Campbell, he's a 70-game starter in the National Football League, so Devontae Adams, you know what I mean? Like, I don't look at it that way.
Speaking of Kelly, you've done this a long time. Is it unusual to have a 17-game starter available at this point? And is this the kind of thing, this is not flashy like Z or whatever, but these are the kind of moves that maybe previously did not always get done around here. It was more, well, let's see what the next young guy can do.
No, I think Ted was really big on these kind of guys. This is kind of like obviously very secondary, maybe third, fourth market type of stuff. We did that. We've always kind of done those kind of things. I give Milt Hendrickson a lot of credit on this one. He kind of stayed on this one. We were looking at Dennis in free agency, and obviously we didn't do much in free agency this year because after we signed all our guys, Kenny and David and Aaron, we were going to have to sit that one out. We just didn't have any, cap dollars to do that with. So not unlike Devondre Campbell, as we went through free agency, those were some of the guys we targeted, but we realized we couldn't at that particular time do it. But as time went on and their markets changed, and then we stayed with it, and it just, I think that's the one thing. And Dennis will tell you, I think he left some money on the table to go somewhere else because he wanted, he understands what this organization is and what we're playing for.
Brian, was, in relation to the Cobb trade, was Rodgers willing to help you pay for it salary cap wise by, making a maneuver? And were you comfortable with pushing more money, if that's true, pushing more money on?
Yeah, we certainly have had to do that, and we will certainly, we'll probably address Aaron's contract at some point, which will create a little bit of salary cap help this year for a move like that. I think that's part of it. We really probably couldn't do that move without Aaron, adjusting his contract and kicking some money out.
Are you okay now? Do you have to make any?
We're okay right now. We're okay right now. But we couldn't get through the season until we touch Aaron's contract.
Aaron talked about wanting to be a recruiter in free agency. Why hasn't that been done in the past, and how do you see that going forward?
I think there's particularly this year, we didn't have the resources to really do much in free agency, so it wasn't an option. I think in the years past, we've never really involved other players in the recruitment, so to speak. It's never really the way we've done things. We've always it's a lot to put on a player at times, when we kind of were aware that this year, after this past season, we were aware that's something he wanted to do. We were very open to it. But we weren't doing anything in free agent that warranted it.
Hey, Goody, Aaron kind of clarified yesterday, I know you have a lot on your plate, so you're not watching the entire 32 minutes, but he did say that he doesn't know what 2022 will be, and he is under contract with you guys. Over the next year, a lot can happen, right? Jordan can make a huge jump forward now that he's got an opportunity to practice. How are you kind of approaching this year in terms of keeping your options open? That if Jordan doesn't quite develop and needs another year, that you can make sure that Aaron Rodgers wants to be here and you have your options open at quarterback?
I think we're just really focused on 21 and trying to win a championship in 21. And I think the development of your young players and get better. That's part of our process, but it's a very important part of our process. You have to be able to grow. Those guys have to grow for us to get better. Those guys have to take the place of players who kind of are starting to decline, or their salaries and things like that. That's part of the NFL. So it's on those players to get better, and then we'll get. After the season, we'll sit there and we'll see where we're at and make those decisions.
Brian, Devontae said yesterday his next contract will make him the highest paid wide receiver. He won't settle for anything less. If you guys aren't willing to make him that right now, then why are you hopeful that you'll be able to sign him? Yeah,
I think there's a little bit with that particular situation is how you interpret what the highest wide receiver in the National League is getting paid. You know what I mean? So certainly I agree with him that he's definitely worth that. And we believe that as well. I think there might be just a little bit of difference in what we believe is the highest paid wide receiver and what he might.
What is that difference?
I'm not going to get into the details of that, but I think again, we value him. He's such a great player. He's a warrior when he goes out there. And obviously we would like to figure something out, and we'll continue to work on that as we go.
Ryan, did Aaron ever demand a trade or ask for a trade throughout the entirety of the season?
Yeah, I'm going to keep all those kind of conversations, Aaron, in-house, just because I don't think that's fair. It's certainly something you can ask him.
So just 3 quarterbacks for camp and extra reps for Jordan?
Yeah, I think so. I think, as we looked at it, obviously, I think this preseason and through the Jet scrimmages, Jordan's going to get a ton of work, which is important, I think, for his development, specifically missing some of that last year. And then we'd like to take a long look at Kurt, too, and he did some good things in OTAs. And that 3 or 4 quarterback thing is always a little bit of a rub, because I think personnel guys like to have 4 just because of injuries and things like that. But then a lot of times that 4th guy is not doing much in practice, and except for throwing to the defense and not getting a lot of reps. So, from a roster situation right now, that doesn't mean we couldn't change it as we go forward. But right now, I'm pretty comfortable with 3.
Let's do 2 more in person, or we go virtual.
Ryan, Aaron classified his relationship with you yesterday as professional.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you think that you need to repair things with him on a personal level in the next year, especially to keep him here?
I think it's important professionally that we continue to talk and kind of move forward and move past some of this stuff. So, yeah, I think it's important. Again, it's going to have to take 2 parties that are willing, but I think it's important.
Brian, you said that Randall Cobb was mentioned early on in your talks with Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
When did he first bring it up seriously, and when did you start to take it seriously?
Yeah, I talked to, I think right after the season, we had a long conversation about this past season, and then went through the roster. And that's kind of where we talked about the slot receiver, and obviously he's very close with Randall. So I think at that point it was when I was aware that was something that would be important to him, and we were, quite frankly, trying to see how this was going to work from a number of angles, from the team, from salary cap, compensation, those kind of things, and I think we really wanted to work with Aaron on that, and it wasn't really until this past week we were able to do that.
All right, Sarah, if you want to take over.
Yep, we just have a few. Steve McGarty.
Talks about how Aaron kind of played a big role in the decision on Randall. From your perspective, what can Cobb still bring to a team at this point in his career, do you think?
Yeah, I think obviously he's had some injury things that he's worked through the past 3 years, but I think he's still got his quickness. He's an exceptionally smart, gritty, tough football player. He's just very aware. I think the relationship that he has with Aaron, but even the quarterbacks that he's played with the past 2 years, you can see it. He's just got one of those kind of sixth sense to know where to be when the quarterback, kind of when things break down and finding space. So, but I think, he's always been a smart, tough, gritty, and then, he's always had the quickness to kind of get open when he needs to get open.
Cody Cross.
Yesterday, you said that you were confident that Rodgers was going to be back pretty much this whole entire process. Say the Randall Cobb situation wasn't able to be worked out, you couldn't make it work financially, or however you had to make it work. Would you have been as confident? Would you have been a little bit more worried at that point about Rodgers being in camp this year?
I don't think so, only because I just think that he's, as good of a player as he is, and as important as this game is to him and the rest of his teammates, and what this team has in front of him. I always felt confident that I know he was going through some things, trying to make some decisions on his own, but I felt the pull of what we can accomplish as a football team would be strong enough to get him here.
And last one, Kyle, WFRB.
Hey Brian, Aaron Rodgers said yesterday he didn't want to be a lame duck quarterback. How do you, or did you, assure Aaron that he won't be this season?
Yeah, that's a hard one for me, because I don't necessarily, I've never looked at it like that. Obviously, at the moment, he's got 3 years left on his contract, so we certainly don't look at it as a lame duck. We may alter that, but even at that stage, it's not going to be a 1-year contract. So, never looked at it like that. As you guys know, in this business, everything's year to year. But I've never looked at it as a lame duck situation with any player.